all. You can take those skills into almost everything that you do. I know a lot of artists and also engineers and scientists and all of that who kind of have creative bug, who continue to doodle in their notebooks, and that can be a rest for your mind or a way to get back on track. So don't forget to do those kinds of things. So next on the agenda for Drawathon is Papay Solomon. And Papay is a young artist. He's a fairly recent graduate from Arizona State University's Herberger School of Art, a wonderful painter. We were just talking to him the other day about he's kind of skilled beyond his years. And he's been doing these really incredible portraits of other immigrants and people that he knows, and really telling their story through portrait painting. He is going to be sharing some drawing skills of doing a portrait. So again, I want to encourage everybody, ask questions via our Facebook page. Share your work, whether it's today or tomorrow or this next week. We want to see what you've been drawing, inspired by this event, by the artists that we're showing. And give a shout out to these artists, and give us a shout out and let us know how we're doing. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Pape. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. So good to see you.
Likewise, thank you.
So would you tell us a little bit about yourself before you get into your demo, which you're actually going to be narrating a video you created?
Correct. Well, my name is Papay Solomon, and I am a painter. My current work has to do with depicting young African immigrants in the diaspora with the intentions of putting forth their narratives. I am trying to break out of this single story mentality of young Black individuals and promote a wholesome tale. That's a little bit about me. I cannot hear you for some reason.
Sorry, I muted myself. Sorry. Technical difficulties that I did on myself. Yeah, so I'm just encouraging everybody, ask questions while you are narrating your video, and I will get those questions to you as we converse.
Sounds great. So I'm assuming I need to share my screen now.
That would be awesome.
Okay, well, there we go. Okay, so this is a video that I pre-recorded 2 days ago of a portrait, a very famous portrait, just recently became famous due to tragedy. I'll just let it play, and I'm sure the portrait is gonna eventually unveil itself. Right here, I am just laying out the materials that I'll be using. So as you can see, I have a mechanical pencil, which is a H pencil. And then I have a B pencil, and I have a HB pencil, and then a 2B, 4B, 6B, and 8B. And then I have a charcoal pencil, and then my kneaded eraser, regular eraser, and then I have my mechanical erasers. And then the funny blue thing in the middle is a plastic palette knife with a sponge on the top of it. And it's oftentimes used for pastel drawings and things like that. But I like to use it to help me get a ground when I'm using my graphite. And talking about graphite, that's me um, taking out some graphite powder and getting ready to start drawing. And the little funny stick that you see is just a stick I use for measurements. Eventually, in the video, you'll see how I use that to help me get proportions correctly. I mean, when you're doing portraits, proportions are very important. A little mistake will give you a different result, create a portrait of someone else. And if you're trying to paint someone, you don't want them looking like other people. And currently, I am just playing around, creating gestures that will allow me, in a way, I'm mapping things out. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to look fancy. It doesn't you don't have to follow any rules whatsoever. This part of the drawing is just laying things out. And I like to play with light and shadow. I think it allows me the ability to just quickly put down what I see without having to worry about focusing on specific lines or, you know, this point is me. I don't know if you can make out the portrait, but this person that I'm drawing has a hat on, and right now I basically just created where the front of the hat is, and the shadows that creates in the portrait. And then from that shadow, I am working my way down from the nose, and now I'm working on the chin and mouth area. And as you can see, it's all about lights and dark. Nothing too serious. I'm just laying things out as I see it.
So I'm
And
assuming because we're going to recognize the portrait later on, you're working from a photograph, but when you're doing your paintings, are you working from life and photographs, or how do you work?
man, my paintings are so meticulously done and so big that I cannot afford to pay someone to sit there for for 2 weeks or so. So I work from photographs that I take myself. When I was in school, I got the revelation that I wanted to, in a way, paint what I saw and not use someone else's references, because it's very important to stay true to your own creative eye. So I like to, in a way, set up that photo shoot, get the photos, and I don't use a really awesome camera. 4 years ago, I knew I was going to be on this path for a long time, so I invested in a entry-level DSLR that I bought during a Black Friday sale, and I'm still using that camera now. I mean, I need to kind of upgrade now because things are getting a bit too fancy, but I've been using it for the past 3-4 years, and it's done me wonders. But as you can see, the portrait is unveiling itself little by little. And I am not really worried at this point to get things accurate. My primary focus is to just lay things out, map things out, so that way, when I come back to add in details, it's easier, and then I can do measurements from this point on. But as you can see, it's a guy and a guy who is smiling. Um, I don't have the teeth in yet. None of that is really a concern as now. What I normally see with amateur artists is the rush mentality, right? A painting or a drawing is not something to rush with. You take your time. Um, you create it to the best of your ability. Every piece presents its own challenges because light works differently on different people, um, you know, different skin tones, um, um, reflect light differently, and so forth. So, you have to, especially when you're doing portraits, I feel like when you're doing something else like landscapes or uh, uh, things like that, then you have the freedom to, in a way, add your own and not get things too accurate. But when it comes to portraits, every tiny mistake takes away from the person. I mean, if that's not your primary focus, then obviously you can do as you please. And that's one thing I love about art making. It allows you the freedom to do whatever you want to do. There are no rules. I mean, when it comes to oil painting, um, there are rules. There are, I think, about three rules, but when you know the rules, then you can break the rules, and use that to use that knowledge to help you inform the process of breaking the rules to create a particular effect that you're going for. So at the end of the day, I mean, there are no rules. Just learn what everything is, and then you can break them as you please. Um, but you know, I'm still drawing. I'm still putting things in. As you can see, this is very, very light. The pressure is not much. I'm just going back and forth, working on the neck, and I jump back to another side of the portrait, and so I'm just everywhere.
It's
And
been a
now,
while since I was in art school, um, but this technique of laying down the graphite seems to make a lot of sense. Is kind of starting with this soft drawing that I'm assuming that you're going to fill in later with harder substances.
correct.
Yeah, it's a nice
Yeah,
technique. I like it.
yeah, it helps you. I mean, especially if you're a beginner. I mean, the process of starting is honestly the most difficult, right? So if you can avoid that fear by playing around at the beginning, then I highly recommend it. And even though I'm considered a professional artist now, I still like that process of playing around. Um, a portrait is a serious thing, in my opinion. It's not something to play around with, especially if you're obviously it depends on what your uh, conceptual leanings are. But I personally think that portraits are not things to play with because obviously I haven't been as a young African male, I haven't been afforded um, with a lot of portraits. Speaking from art history and Western art history and all of that. So I haven't been afforded too many positive type portraits, and now I feel like it's my responsibility to create those portraits with a focus that might be overlooked by other people.
I think that's a great point because I think in Western art history, we're so used to portraits of usually white males um,
Right.
and done by white males. And you're kind of taking that Western tradition and making it your own and giving it your own twist.
Exactly. I mean, I'm African, but I came here when I was 14 years old, and I just recently turned on 27. So I've been here for almost equally as long. So I relate to both parts uh, of my life. You know, now when I go back home, I'm considered more American because I mean I've been Americanized. You know, I've assimilated in more ways than one. And here, I don't feel like I am American enough, right? Whatever that term, that idea means, right? Because I honestly feel like it's an idea. Um, so yeah, I like to kind of use those facts about my identity to inform how I approach my work. That's why I draw heavily from Western art, classical Western art, and then I also draw heavily from West African art and African art in general, right, to inform my practice. But let me go back to this video. As you can see right now, I have that weird little stick. So I am using that currently. You can't see that, it's not in frame, but I'm using that right now to, in a way, figure out the distance between the bottom of the chin to the nose, and the distance from the bottom of the nose to where the cap sits. Basically, the reason why I do that is to, in a way, get the relationship between the first distance and compare it to the second distance to make sure that even though I'm not here measuring things out with a ruler, I can get something that is almost perfect, right? And with portraits, that's one of the most important things to do, is to get those very tight measurements, especially in the face area, because, like I said previously, one slight mistake might have your portrait looking like someone else. And I mean, that's also a rule you can break depending, like I said, on what you want to achieve. If you want to create deformed facial features or even body parts, you can do that. But just knowing how to capture someone as closely as possible is a skill that I feel like every artist needs to have. It needs to be in your toolkit, and then you can obviously keep it, use it frequently, or keep it and not use it at all. Hopefully, you use it, because I also believe that if you don't use it, you lose it. So,
I believe in that too. I have just come back to drawing after a 20-year hiatus, and I certainly lost a lot of skills along the way. So I get what you're talking about.
right.
Hey, just for a second, is could you give people your web address and Instagram handle so that if they want to see some of your paintings, they can also do so? And then I'm also going to encourage people to shout out some questions or comments for us, and I will share them with Pepe.
Okay. I'll start with my website. I haven't really gone public with it yet, but it's active. I'm currently in the process of making some major updates to it and eventually publishing it. But you can find it at www.papaysolomon.com, and that's spelled PAPAYSOLOMON.com. My Instagram is at Papay Solomon. Again, PAPAYSOLOMON. Fairly easy. And if you want to find me on Facebook, you can also just look up Papay Solomon artist. I think I'm not on that page too much, but I do post sometimes.
Thank you. What has been the response from some of your sitters to your work?
Ah, man. Uh, I've had very, very amazing responses. Responses that I think are too good sometimes, right? I I'll start with a friend. So I did this portrait that I called Heavyweight of a really close friend of mine from high school. And, my portraits, as I mentioned previously, are very story oriented, stories of the sitters themselves. I like to tailor my work to suit who they are, their essence. My goal with my work is to capture life. I'm not sure if I'm attaining that so far, but hopefully before I die, that's something I can attain. Uh, but then again, I do realize that I'm too ambitious at times. But one morning at 6 o'clock, when he was trying to avoid this portrait. When I was painting it, I would post it here and there on social media, and he avoided my social media for a while. And one time he was browsing on Facebook early in the morning, around like 5 o'clock. He's an early bird. He calls me, and I was up as well because I think waking up early is always a good idea, especially if you want to do great things. Um, so he calls me in the morning. He's like, "Papay, why would you do this to me?" Right? Um, I'm like, what did I do? I'm not, I wasn't sure because it was too early to be confronted about something. Right? I'm like, I don't know what I did.
Totally too
Uh,
early.
right. And then he goes, you posted up the portrait of me. I'm like, yeah. Do you approve? Do you not? And he pauses for a while, and then his voice completely changes. I knew he was getting emotional, and he basically told me, "Thank you for making my life," right? And I still don't completely understand what he meant by that. But I can kind of tell. To me, it was too much. I mean, it's still too much right now, honestly, to be told that I'm helping create someone else's life, right? And another sitter of mine messaged me. She texted me when I was done with the portrait and I was posting it and whatnot. She messaged me. She said, "Thank you for making me feel beautiful." As as a black young woman, um, images of beauty are oftentimes uh, in the Western world, obviously, white women, white thin women are oftentimes shown as what is supposed to be beautiful. I mean, I think white women are beautiful, but I also think black women are beautiful, and it's okay to show that too. And I think beauty is also in the eyes of the beholder. And so, I mean, as an artist who paints portraits, I mean, I love beautiful people, right? So, yeah, those were some comments that I've gotten, and I've gotten more, but those are the ones that really stick out to me so far.
I think this is an important topic, and we have a lot of teens watching today, and I think this is an important topic to bring up with them too. Is um, we don't have to adhere to the traditions of what Western society says is beauty, or what or to change the boundaries that have been up for so long and start breaking those down and see everyone. And I think that first sitter you talked about, I can only imagine that they felt that you really saw them,
Right.
that that you brought something extra to their life because they were seen. And I think that's a goal of humanity is we all want to be seen.
I agree. I agree. As young Africans in the diaspora, I mean, we're often not seen, right? And whenever we are seen, we're not seen in the light that we deserve to be seen in, right? When I first came to I was 14, and I mean I didn't have too many reference points. Um, I had to figure out a lot of things on my own, and I mean I would use television and the radio station and things like that to kind of um, I don't know, assimilate or learn about the culture or whatever. And whenever I would go, on these different media platforms, I mean, I only encountered rappers, basketball players, and reality TV shows, and all of that mess, right? And I didn't really feel like it really represented who I was as a person, right? So oftentimes when we're shown, we are probably doing something stupid, right? Or even if not stupid, but it's not an identity that we all carry, right? So ever since then, I've been on a mission to in a way expand that representation to much more, to something that I'm actually used to who I am. I feel like I'm telling my own story, but through other faces.
I love that. We've actually got a comment and a question.
Okay.
Stacy M, and I'm going to guess this is Stacy from McClintock High. Uh, Says your blending is lovely as well as the variety of values you're able to achieve. So shout out
Thank
from
you.
there. And Niley is saying, how do you overcome artist block?
Oh God.
That might be the toughest question of the day.
Oh, trust me, I love it. I love it. Bring all of the tough questions that you have. I'm ready for it. So, so I actually almost experienced something along those lines a few months ago, about 3, 4 months ago. I currently have an exhibition open in Boston at Steven Zavita's gallery, titled uh, Nightmares Americana. So when I was preparing for that exhibition, I mean, I knew what I wanted to say. I mean, I wanted to create my portraits the way I've been doing, but add something new to it, right? And at the time, I don't think I had a title yet, but I knew what I was going for. And I was in the process of creating, and I was gonna leave this portrait and not and kind of let it reveal itself, but now I have to disclose that information. Um, at that point, the news came out that Ahmaud Arbery had been shot, right? And and that's who I'm doing a portrait of right now. This is one of his very famous portraits that was on the news 24/7, right? Um, when I got that news, it put me in a space where, as a young Black man who at the time was just a year older than this guy, I literally saw myself in him. I mean, I'm a painter, but I like to run, right? So oftentimes I run in the mornings before heading to the studio. And sometimes I run at night, especially when my schedule is really busy and I don't have time in the morning. I run in the nighttime. It's a good way to clear my mind and release daily stresses and just recharge for me, right? So when I saw that, I mean, I could literally see myself in that picture. Young Black man running. It's it was close. So, it messed me up. And I, watching yourself die for no reason, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow. And the weeks that led after that put me in this position where I didn't really want to do my work, even though I had a harsh deadline. Um, I I mean, I would come to the studio, but I wasn't. I didn't have it in me to really do what I needed to do, what I love to do. But I came anyways, and I would come here sometimes in my studio and watch a movie or watch comedy skits on Comedy Central and other platforms. I still wanted to be in this environment because to me, this is my sanctuary. This is my temple. This is my safe area, right? Outside can be too dangerous for someone like me. I mean, even driving, right, could be a reason to die, right? So I came in here anyways and, you know, just hung out and watched things and sometimes just wrote and wasted time and all of that. But I mean, as I hung out, I tried to draw or paint. Sometimes I would mix the paint and leave the paint and let the paint dry. I mean, I paint in oil, so it takes a few days for it to dry. But so I did that for quite a while. And eventually I just picked back up and I knew that I needed to, that I wouldn't be of service if I just hang out and not do my work. And I feel like that's something that racism and all of these things do. They create an environment where our minds become so poisoned, right? Creates all this trauma for Black people, particularly, where that keeps us away from wanting to do our work, right? And I feel like um, the work is where change happens. But I mean, it keeps you away sometimes. So I would encourage whoever that's having an artist block to just, do something in terms of like or draw a line. You don't have to draw or paint as you normally do. Just make sure or just be in your environment, in your studio, if you have one. If you don't, just, I don't know, open your old drawings and go through what you've done previously to kind of just spark an idea and just spark interest. That's a long answer to just say, keep going, keep doing what you have to do. It's not gonna feel good all the time, but as a professional, I mean, it's my job, so I have to work even when I don't want to. But it's not often that I don't want to, and I feel like that's a privilege on its own. Most times I'm here, I'm doing my thing. I don't care what's happening in the world, but sometimes it just hits you across the head, and you have to, yeah, it messes you up for sure.
You
But you got to
talk a
keep
little
going.
bit about, watching movies or watching comedy shows or listening to music. Have you found seeing some of the art that is coming out about social justice? Um, is that inspiring for you as well?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I have to keep an eye on my contemporaries for sure. I, one thing about bad situations is in the arts. It's kind of funny. Um, when situations are messy and bad, I feel like sometimes the most beautiful works come out of there, right? And it's a harsh reality to kind of grapple with as an artist and as an African and a Black guy and all of that, right? Because I mean, I'm experiencing a nightmare, right? I am experiencing a nightmare, and I feel like white America, Trump America, has kind of flipped it to make it seem like we are the nightmare, right? Not knowing we are the ones who are actually having to deal with the nightmare. Um, so, I mean, it's we can go for hours with this. We can go for hours and hours.
I
But
know, I know.
I I like what I'm seeing, and I like that young people like myself are out here
Yeah,
actually trying to make a difference and pushing envelopes, because most times the old people, although they're the ones who control legislation and things like that. I mean, I think we have more power because we're the ones who still have the energy to kind of go out and protest and kind of take risk and do things like that. So I employ every young person that is watching to be of service. I mean, I I don't really oftentimes paint portraits of things that are popular in the media, right? Because I don't I I I feel like it's my responsibility to create portraits of those who are often unseen, right? Um, and with my portraits, I like to celebrate what it means to be Black, what it means to be African, what it means to have melanated skin. I like to celebrate that and show our our grace, our our love, Black pain, Black excellence. Those are things I like to showcase in my work. And I like to kind of avoid Black trauma because I feel like it's become a trend now where everyone just shares Black trauma, right? I mean, but sometimes you just gotta engage with it. Like me drawing this portrait a few days ago, I had to kind of relive some things that happened to me 3 4 months ago, but it's something that I have to do to for us to have this conversation right now.
I also appreciate that you chose this subject because I think for some of our teen artists out there too is before you kind of find that voice of what kind of artist voice you want to have and what you want to say. Um, Sometimes the dipping your toe into the waters for a young artist is to draw famous people or things that you see in the media or from images. So this is relatable for me when we're talking to young artists. Is you can still do that, um, but also pay attention to your choices.
Right. People think that art doesn't really have that much power, but I completely disagree. I mean, I feel like just having an image is a powerful thing, right? An image is an idea, and an image can spark something else. I mean, I may not be the one who changes the world, right? But hopefully before I'm gone, I spark that mind that do change the world, right? Everything I feel like is interconnected. You may think that, let's say, a scientist is not creative, or a scientist does something completely different than I do, or a chemist does something completely different than I do. But I completely disagree. I mean, especially let's say the closest is a chemist. Let's say, right? They have to mix things up, right? And I mean, I'm a painter. I use oils and I use all these mediums that I have to mix to kind of get a certain feel and get a certain look, right? It's basically the same thing. And I mean, instead of just um, art being a pretty thing, I feel like it's way more than that. It sparks conversation, which I feel like a lot of us in America are trying to avoid. And I think a conversation, especially at this point, is not a good idea to avoid. Uh, we need to have these conversations. It needs to happen for there to be change. Some people might be uncomfortable with it, but hey, grow up and let's do what needs to be done.
Our artistic director of City of Tempe, Ralph Remington, often says, "Lean into discomfort," and that has been something that I think we're all having to face and do more. So appreciate you talking about it.
Yeah, it's a
I
beautiful
also
place.
want to talk a little bit about the techniques and the pencils that you're using right now.
Of
Um,
course.
yeah.
So right now, let me see. I'm not quite sure what pencil I'm using, but I am sure though that I'm not using an H pencil or an HB pencil because those are like your typical pencils, right? So I think at this point I'm using maybe a B6 or like a B4 or something like that. And basically what that means is the higher the number, the darker the graphite. So when it's time to, let's say, um, draw something lighter, then I would recommend an H pencil, right? Or an HB pencil or like a B2 pencil. And when you're headed to somewhere darker, then I recommend, a higher number pencil. So as you can see here, I am using my eraser and my pencils. So I draw and then I erase and I draw again and I erase. It's a slow process and it's a process where you have to go back and forth. And I recommend that you do as much as you can, go back and forth. And I think that the better you become at what you do, you get to a point where you don't really have to think about it anymore, where the painting or the drawing speaks to you, right? And it tells you what to do, right? And I think if you get there, and I hope we all get there, right? I think that I implore everyone to follow their heart, because the drawing or the painting will tell you when to stop and when to add more and when to proceed. A thing that I see with younger artists is the need to do too much. Um, you don't have to do too much. And most times, I don't recommend for you to do too much. So you got to go, step by step. It's a process. I mean, it requires a lot of work.
Do you recommend stepping away from a drawing, and coming back to it a day later or hours later?
Absolutely, yes, yes. I mean, this drawing is 7 by 10 inches, right? So it's not that big, and you can kind of see the whole of the drawing without any issue. But when you get to a point where you feel like you need to kind of step away or you need to see it from a different perspective, then I would recommend definitely taking some time off. Or what you can also do is you can flip the painting upside down to kind of give you a different perspective, right? And that just allows your eyes and everything in you to see things differently and add what needs to be added to it.
I think that's good advice because I definitely, since I'm coming back to drawing myself, um, I want to finish a drawing in one sitting. Is that need I have in the back of my head? But I notice that when I take a break, maybe come back a day or two later, and I've been looking at it off and on, just kind of glancing at it, that I find the things that I missed when I was so intensely wanting to finish it.
Right, right. I think art is not one of those things that you need to rush. But then again, when you have a lot of deadlines, like I've had,
Like a big
sometimes,
solo show in
r- r-
Boston.
right, right. When you have harsh deadlines on your calendar and you have multiple of those, I mean, you have to kind of, get things out. But what I find really interesting is that pressure also helps creativity. It's kind of a weird concept because, especially in school, you're told to do things as early as possible, and that is good advice. That's great advice, actually. But when you have a lot of things happening, most times you don't have that luxury, right? But I also think, for me in particular, when I'm pressed with time, I do things that I then look at later and go, wow, I did that, right? Like that's amazing, right? Because, you know, although I work from pictures, I don't really use pictures to the T for my information. I I feel like I am a human Photoshop in a sense, where I make the adjustments that I feel need to be made based on the narratives that I'm working with, and 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 the visual concepts and things that I'm trying to get across. So, I edit things, and I paint some things, and I remove some things, and I do other things that the picture doesn't present to me. And, um, basically whatever that needs to be done to get what I imagine done. So here, like I said, I'm just working slowly, and I'm just adding um, the darks, and working with the lights. And eventually, when it comes to the high highlights, I'm gonna be using a charcoal pencil to a white charcoal pencil, right? Because right now things look a bit dull, especially when you start looking at places like the tip of the nose, or his cheeks, and even the teeth, and the top of the lips and stuff, right? Those areas need to be much lighter. But I like working with a gray tone paper, because it kind of it gives you that mid tone, right? And if you don't have a gray tone paper, I would recommend that you take some charcoal powder or graphite powder, put it on a rag, and just, get your paper toned. And then you can go back and forth and erase things if you need to, and add things. But I think it gives you kind of a ground where, you don't have to be too intimidated, because if you only have like a plain white paper, it's somewhat intimidating to kind of put a mark on there, right? So I would recommend that you just go in and just scribble something, try to cover the whole thing, and then come back. And it helps create a surface where you already have kind of things there. So let's say you want to add darks. You wouldn't have to add too much, because the tone surface already kind of provides that color that you're, going for. And then if you have to kind of lighten it up, especially if you're using gray tone paper, then you can use like a white charcoal to kind of bring those very subtle and nice highlights. So right now I'm just drawing where the shirt should be. And I'm approaching it this way, particularly because I want to be very minimal with the shirt, and I don't want to add too much details. So instead of using lights and dark and value to kind of draw that, I went in and started using lines. And, that's, like I said, the more advanced you become, you kind of understand what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And you can go back and forth. So sadly, when I was recording this video, my phone went off, or I had no space, I guess. So I had to
Oh
transfer some,
no.
right. So I had to transfer some videos of my laptop, and then go back
I
and
think you need
record
to
this
just
part.
tell people that you were doing a little flash thing and you speedy art.
Right, exactly,
You just couldn't, we
exactly.
couldn't see it. It was so
You couldn't see
fast.
it. It was just, it was light fast, right? But so, like I was saying previously, you can see me now with a white charcoal, and I'm just going in, just, adding those high highlights, like I previously mentioned, and, trying to make sure that uh, the blacks are red as black, and then the lights are red as light. And obviously, as you can see, this is a very monochrome portrait. The only color, obviously, is the orange that I use for the background to kind of separate the portrait from the background. But like I
It's a
said,
nice effect with a drawing. I like it.
thank you. Yeah, I do too. When it comes to my drawings in particular, I don't like to push it too much. I like the unfinished and the simplicity, the elegance of simplicity, to speak for itself and show out. Um, so yeah, I'm just adding more details and the tiny little fun stuff. At this point, I had already applied a workable fixative to kind of set the charcoal that I had previously, so I can come back and have an easier time adding more highlights, more bright, and nicer highlights.
Papay, will you also just briefly talk about, sort of your road for art school? Is I'm assuming you've been drawing since you were a kid, you
Right.
know, um, and then you got your BFA at ASU. But how did you get on that road to getting an art degree? And for somebody who maybe is thinking about doing a portfolio review or thinking about art school or community college or private, what are some of your what's your advice?
Well, I so to start with, I didn't want to go to art school. Well, I mean, I didn't think it was necessary, because when I graduated from high school, I mean, I've always known I wanted to be a professional artist since I was 5. So that wasn't a question. But coming from an African household, um, if you're not uh, uh, if you're not an engineer, a doctor, or something along those lines, then you're a failure or whatever, right?
Oh no.
So I had those battles happening inside of me. So I went to school for computer programming. I did that for 2 years, and those were the most unpleasant 2 years of my life. So I dropped out and um transferred to art. And I was at Phoenix College for I think about a year or so, to get the basic classes out of the way, and then I eventually transferred to Arizona State. But even then, I was kind of hesitant about the whole thing. For me personally, I mean, I've been doing this since I was a child, no questions. So it's been a part of my life since I can remember. So I didn't really think school was necessary. So when I transferred to Arizona State, I was honestly doing it for studio space and to have a community of like-minded people. Honestly, that's the only reason why I went to art school.
No, I get
um,
that. I think that is as important of a part of the experience as anything.
right, right. And so, yeah, I went and it was amazing. The people that my colleagues at the time, where I mean, everyone was in school and everyone was trying to get a good grade and also paint a good, painting or whatever they were doing. But yeah, if you're thinking about school, I say do it. So right now I'm in a position where I'm trying to figure out whether I want to go to grad school or not. I mean, I've been out of school for about 2 years and some. I purposefully took that time in between because I wanted to, in a way, get an experience of what it means to be an artist out of school. They're two completely different things, by the way. When you're in school, I don't really think you're an artist at that point. I mean, you're training to be, but I don't know. If you would consider yourself an artist, and I think it's in the real world that you really get to um, figure out and be labeled as an artist, because at that point you have to deal with real life things and not the typical school type thing. So yeah, I would say go to art school. And I mean, you also have to be real with where you want to be um, as an artist and what you're capable of. I mean, if you're trying to be a world renowned artist, that comes with a lot more than you think, right? it's a lot of work and it's not easy work. So you have to be ready for, I mean, it's fun work. Um, I'm often in my studio until like 3 o'clock, sometimes 5 o'clock. Sometimes I sleep over at the studio. I mean, the past month, I did that quite a lot.
I'm not
um,
surprised.
right. So you have to put in the time. I mean, even at school, I was one of the last ones to leave school. I mean, I would go there. I would be the first ones to go to school. And I mean, I didn't even know where a lot of the places the hangout spots were back at ASU, right? I mean, I only knew the
Oh
student union
no.
at my studio, really, because I would just go get food and hang out for a little bit and go back to the studio until like 11, 12 a.m. and have to be back at like 8, 9 o'clock. Um, so yeah, if you're really about this, you have to put in the work. It's it's fun work, but you have to do it. It doesn't come easy at all.
Just as a side note, I find the removing of the tape very satisfying.
Yes, yes. I feel the same way. That's why I kind of slowed this portion of the video so people can actually. It's like applying varnish, right? Where it's just a beautiful experience to watch and experience. So
Pepe, we're at a 5-minute mark. Um, if you want to kind of wrap up the drawing in your description, and then I do have one last question. This is actually from my colleague Cody, and he asks, is there a duty of artists during these trying times?
yes, yes. I mean, everyone has a duty, whether you're an artist or an educator or a dentist or whatever you are, right? Whatever you do, you have a duty to do whatever you can to make sure that the next generation don't have to deal with the atrocities that this generation or previous generations have dealt with. I mean, it's everyone. It should be everyone's responsibility, whether you're a professional or not, right? So whatever you can do, I say that use the strongest thing in your arsenal. The thing that you can do best to start that conversation or start that change, because it honestly begins with you. Whether you are Black, whether you're white, whether you're Hispanic or whatever you're privileged or not. I mean, if you're privileged, and I feel very privileged to even be an artist, right? So if you're privileged, well, it's your responsibility to use your privilege to make life better for not only you, but other people as well, because we all deserve to live. That's a fundamental right. Everyone deserves to live peacefully and not be hunted. So, yeah, it's your
I agree.
responsibility, and it's
I
everyone
agree.
else's. Do
I
what you
have
got to do.
I have teenagers myself. I told you this, and
Right.
I we have many conversations about the best thing for if if they ask me what I want them to be or do, is I just want them to leave this place better than they found it. I
Exactly.
think that's each of our responsibilities no matter what we do. So I agree with you. I do have one more technical question from Courtney.
Okay.
Um, and they're asking, what tape do you use that doesn't stick and tear the paper?
Oh
That's a
yeah.
great question.
It's a great question because as you can see, there are some rips, right? So I use blue tape and I use artist tape, but there is this method that I forgot to use when I was doing this. A method where you take out tape and you rub it. You you kind of tape your shirt, right, or your pants or whatever you're wearing, right? You
Oh, pick
apply
up
the
some
tape.
fibers.
Exactly. And then you can apply the tape on wherever you want to apply. And those fibers kind of prevent the tape from really, really catching the paper. You know, I should have done that, but
I
I'm going to
actually
solve the
kind of
problem.
love that it happened to you.
Me
That,
too.
no matter how skilled or how advanced you are, that we all still make mistakes, and
Exactly.
we learn from them. And that little conversation led to you giving us a trick of the trade.
Basically, yeah. And since it was a little drawing, I was just like, you know what? I need to get this done and do other things. So I kind of forgot. But hey, I'll fix it.
I also think this is a lovely dedication to Ahmad. So thank you for doing that.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Would you repeat your web address, and let's encourage people to share their own drawings and feedback and what you like and what you want to see more of in the future?
Yes. So my web address is papaysolomon.com, spelled PAPAYSOLOMON.com. And I'm also very active on Instagram, and that is at Papay Solomon. Also at PAPAYSOLOMON. I Yeah, if you do a drawing, please tag me, and obviously tag Tempe Arts. It's something that we love to see. I think that as an artist and even as a person, or doesn't matter, I think hard work beats everything. Talent is good, but when you have talent and you have that hard work and dedication, I think the sky cannot be a limit, right? So go out there and work hard and be the change that you want to see.
That that's a really great ending, and just on time. You timed that just beautifully.
I had to. I'm a very detailed oriented person.
Pepe, this has been lovely. Thank you so much. I also want to give you a shout out because you and I are going to get to work together. You've agreed to be in an exhibition we're doing in the fall of 2021 called Degrees of Being. And you're among the first artists that I invited to be in the show. So I'm very excited to be working with you on that.
Thank you. I am very excited as well. Can't
Excellent.
wait to see what comes out of that one.
Excellent, excellent. Pepe, have a great rest of your day. Again, our shout out, thank you, Pepe. Our shout out to the community that we would love to see what you've been up to, drawing, and some of the social justice issues that Pepe has been sharing. We'd love to see if you've been making art in that realm. If you'll tag us at Tempe Arts or tag Papay Solomon, we would all love to see that. So, moving along with the day, again, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions and comments for the artists. But also, I'm going to ask you that if you have questions or comments or shout outs that you'd like to give to the Tempe Center for the Arts, we would always love to hear them. You can email me, Michelle_Doc at tempe.gov, or visit us on our website, which is tempecenterforthearts.com, and you can get a hold of us that way. We have a wonderful still virtual season to go with our shift programming. So be sure and log on